There is a moment that many people never see coming. It is the moment when the tension in a relationship stops feeling like ordinary conflict and starts feeling like something is being taken from you a little at a time. You cannot always name it. You just notice that you feel smaller than you used to. You second guess things you once knew for certain. You apologize for reactions that any reasonable person would have. And somewhere beneath all of it, a quiet question begins to form. Why do I feel like I am losing myself? When manipulation becomes more calculated, the goal is not always about controlling the relationship anymore. Sometimes the pattern shifts. The focus moves toward wearing down your confidence, isolating you from the people who ground you, rewriting the story of who you are, and slowly making you doubt your own perception of reality. That is a very different and far more serious dynamic. And if any part of that resonates with you, this may be one of the most important things you watch today. Before we go deeper, if this channel has ever helped you feel less alone or more clear headed, take a second to subscribe. What we talk about here is not about labeling people or seeking revenge. It is about helping you understand what is happening to you so you can protect your peace and find your footing again. Subscribing means you will not have to search for clarity alone the next time the fog rolls in. Let us begin with the first pattern. One of the earliest and most disorienting signs is when your own memory becomes a battleground. You remember a conversation one way, and you are told with complete confidence that it never happened, or that it happened in a way that makes you the problem. Over time, this is what people describe as gaslighting. It is not simple disagreement. It is a steady erosion of your ability to trust your own mind. In real life, it rarely looks dramatic at first. It looks like being told you are too sensitive when you express a legitimate concern. It looks like being told you are imagining things when you point out a broken promise. It looks like a version of events being repeated so calmly and so often that you start to wonder if you are the unreliable one. The psychology behind this is important. When someone repeatedly contradicts your reality while remaining composed, your nervous system faces a painful choice. Either the person you care about is distorting the truth, or you cannot trust your own perception. Because trusting yourself feels safer than confronting that painful possibility, many people unconsciously side against themselves. That is exactly why this behavior is so effective. It uses your own decency and self-doubt as the weapon. The reason targets misunderstand it early on is that they assume good faith. They believe the other person is simply confused or forgetful. They keep explaining themselves, hoping that if they just find the right words, they will finally be understood. What to watch for is not a single argument, but a pattern. If you find yourself keeping mental records just to prove to yourself that you are not crazy, pay attention. That instinct is telling you something. This leads directly into the second pattern, because once your perception has been shaken, something else often follows. The second sign is a slow and steady chipping away at your sense of worth. This is sometimes called devaluation. In the beginning, you may have felt admired, even idealized. Then gradually, the warmth cools. The compliments turn into criticisms disguised as jokes. Your achievements are minimized. Your appearance, your intelligence, your choices, your feelings, all become targets of subtle disapproval. What makes this so damaging is the contrast. If someone had been cold from the start, you would have known where you stood. But when affection is replaced by criticism after you have already opened your heart, the loss cuts deeper. You start working harder to earn back the approval you once had freely. And that effort is exactly what keeps you locked in. Here it is essential to distinguish between normal relationship conflict and manipulation. In a healthy relationship, disagreements happen, feelings get hurt, and people say things they regret. But there is repair. There is accountability. There is a mutual desire to understand and be understood. Both people leave the conflict feeling more connected, not more diminished. Manipulation does not seek repair. It seeks compliance. If conflict consistently ends with you feeling worthless while the other person feels vindicated, that is not a communication problem. That is a control dynamic. Pay attention to how you feel about yourself over time. If you were once confident and are now constantly anxious about whether you are enough, ask yourself when that shift began and who was present for it. The third pattern is more difficult to see because it happens outside of your direct view. This is when your relationships and your reputation quietly begin to change. It can involve triangulation, where a third person is pulled into the dynamic to create jealousy, competition, or confusion. It can involve subtle comments to others that paint you as unstable, difficult, or overly emotional. What people call a smear campaign often does not look like open cruelty. It looks like concern. It looks like someone shaking their head and saying they are just so worried about you, while quietly planting doubt about your character. The effect is profound. You begin to notice that people treat you differently and you do not understand why. Friends become distant. Family members seem skeptical of your version of events. You feel a growing sense of isolation, and isolation is exactly what makes a person more dependent on the one causing the harm. This behavior is hard to recognize while it is happening because it operates in the spaces you cannot access. You are not in the room when your story is being reshaped. You only feel the results. And when you sense it and try to speak up, you risk looking exactly as paranoid as the narrative has suggested you are. That is the trap. The more accurate your perception becomes, the more it can be used against you. What matters here is not proving your case to everyone. It is recognizing that your support system is your lifeline, and that any dynamic which systematically erodes it deserves your serious attention. The people who truly know you over time will usually see the truth. Protecting those connections is protecting yourself. If what you are hearing is landing somewhere deep, I want to pause for a moment. If this is giving language to things you have felt but could never quite explain, consider subscribing so you can keep learning at your own pace. This is not about turning you into someone bitter or vengeful. It is about helping you understand manipulation clearly, rebuild trust in yourself, set boundaries that actually hold, and recover from relationship patterns that quietly drain the life out of you. Think of it as an invitation to keep walking forward, one honest realization at a time. Now, the fourth pattern. This is where control begins to reveal itself more openly, often through unpredictability. One day you are met with affection and generosity. The next day, for reasons you cannot identify, you are met with coldness, withdrawal, or hostility. This inconsistency is not random, even when it feels chaotic. Psychologists refer to a phenomenon called intermittent reinforcement, and it is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. When rewards and punishments are delivered unpredictably, the mind becomes obsessed with earning the reward again. It is the same mechanism that makes gambling so compelling. You keep hoping the good version of the person will return, so you stay, you adjust, you tolerate more than you ever thought you would. The unpredictability itself becomes a form of control because you organize your entire emotional life around trying to keep the peace. Sometimes this pattern includes emotional punishment. The silent treatment, withdrawal of warmth as a consequence for stepping out of line, retaliation for setting a boundary. These are not accidents of a bad mood. They are ways of teaching you that having needs will cost you. Here I want to say something clearly. If you are experiencing this, your safety and emotional well-being matter far more than winning any argument. You do not have to prove your point. You do not have to get the other person to admit what they are doing. In fact, in situations involving this kind of control, direct confrontation can sometimes increase the risk to you. Your goal is not to defeat them in a debate. Your goal is to protect yourself and regain your stability. Those are not the same thing, and choosing your safety is not surrender. It is wisdom. The fifth pattern is about what all of this does to you over time. After prolonged exposure to unpredictability, criticism, and reality distortion, something changes inside you. You may become hypervigilant, constantly scanning for the next shift in mood, bracing for impact before anything has even happened. You may feel a persistent low-grade anxiety that never fully switches off. You may find yourself confused and exhausted, unable to make simple decisions because you have spent so long deferring to someone else. You may notice a heavy fog, a kind of mental fatigue that makes you feel like a shadow of who you used to be. I need you to hear this with your whole heart. These reactions are not weakness. They are not proof that something is wrong with you. They are the completely understandable response of a nervous system that has been under sustained strain. When a person lives in an environment where safety is inconsistent, the mind and body adapt by staying on alert. That is not a flaw, that is survival. The problem was never your sensitivity. The problem was the environment that made such sensitivity necessary. There is also often a deep sense of self blame that gets absorbed along the way. This connects to something called projection, where the very behaviors a person cannot face in themselves are pushed onto you. You may be accused of being controlling by the one controlling you, or called dishonest by the one distorting the truth, or labeled selfish by the one who consistently ignores your needs. Over time, these accusations can stick, and you begin to carry a version of yourself that was never really yours. This is blame shifting, and it works by exploiting your willingness to reflect and take responsibility. Your conscience becomes the very thing used against you. Recognizing this is the beginning of putting it down. The exhaustion you feel is real, and it is not a character defect. It is the weight of carrying something that was never fair to ask you to carry. And now, the sixth and most serious pattern. There comes a point where you may realize that this is no longer a difficult relationship going through a rough season. It is a repeating cycle. The tension builds, something erupts, there is a period of apparent calm or even sweetness, and then the tension begins to build again. Around and around it goes. And each time you tell yourself this will be the last time, that things will finally change, that if you just love them enough or explain yourself clearly enough, the cruelty will stop. But patterns tell the truth that words often hide. When boundaries are repeatedly violated, no matter how gently you set them, when your needs are consistently treated as offenses, when punishment reliably follows any attempt at independence, you are no longer looking at poor communication. You are looking at a system of control designed to keep you compliant and off balance. This is the moment of clarity, and it is a heavy one, because recognizing it means letting go of the hope that a different approach on your part will change the outcome. It means understanding that the instability was never something you caused, and therefore never something you could fix by being better, quieter, or more accommodating. That realization can bring grief. It is painful to accept that the relationship you hoped for may not be available. But that grief is also the doorway to freedom, because you cannot begin to protect yourself from a pattern you refuse to name. I want to be careful and honest here. Not every difficult person is intentionally harmful, and these patterns do not prove that someone has any specific condition. What matters is not the label. What matters is the effect on you and the consistency of the behavior over time. You are allowed to protect yourself from harm without having to become an expert in someone else's psychology. So where does this leave you? Not powerless and not needing to destroy anyone. The path forward is quieter and far more powerful than revenge. It begins with rebuilding your relationship with your own perception. Start trusting the small voice inside you that has been trying to get your attention. When something feels wrong, let that feeling be information rather than something to argue yourself out of. Reconnecting with your own sense of reality is the foundation everything else is built on. It continues with emotional distance where full separation is not immediately possible. You do not have to react to every provocation. You do not have to defend yourself against every distortion. You can learn to respond less, to give away less access to your inner world, to stop handing over the emotional reactions that fuel the cycle. Withdrawing your participation is not coldness. It is the reclaiming of your energy. It involves boundaries that are for you, not against them. A boundary is not a punishment or a manipulation tactic. It is simply a clear line about what you will and will not accept, and what you will do to take care of yourself if that line is crossed. The power of a boundary lives in your follow-through, not in convincing the other person it is fair. Where it is appropriate and safe, quietly documenting what happens can help you stay anchored in reality when someone tries to rewrite it. It can also matter practically if you ever need to make important decisions about your situation. And throughout all of this, leaning on a trusted support system is essential. Reach toward the people who have known you and cared for you. Consider the guidance of a qualified professional who understands these dynamics. You were never meant to make sense of this entirely alone, and reaching out is a sign of strength, not failure. Let me leave you with the truth that matters most. Your greatest victory in this is not making the other person understand what they did. It is not exposing them, defeating them, or getting the apology you deserve. Those things may never come, and waiting for them can keep you trapped for years. Your greatest victory is refusing to lose yourself. It is walking out of the fog, still holding on to your kindness, your clarity, and your sense of who you are. Something shifts the moment you truly see the pattern. The same behavior that once wounded you begins to lose its grip because you finally understand what it is. Confusion turns into recognition. Recognition turns into choice. And choice is the thing that manipulation was always trying to take from you. You do not have to become hard to become free. You do not have to become cruel to stop being harmed. You simply have to stop abandoning yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Choose your peace over an endless psychological battle you were never meant to win. Choose the people who make you feel more like yourself, not less. Choose to rebuild slowly, gently, and on your own terms. You are allowed to reclaim your identity. You are allowed to trust yourself again. You are allowed to choose a life that feels calm instead of constantly bracing for the next storm. And the version of you that has been waiting quietly underneath all of this is still there, ready to come home. If this gave you even a little more clarity or a little more peace, subscribe and stay with us. The next step of understanding yourself does not have to be taken alone, and there is more here waiting whenever you are ready. Take care of yourself. You are worth protecting.